Hi folks, Birdy here, and today MediaWhorz is going to be reviewing the magnum opus of the late 80s and early 90s action star, Brandon Lee, as he plays the title role in what is, literally, his last film. May he rest in peace. Tonight's film is The Crow, an adaptation of the comic book written by James O'Barr. So, let's see how scary a bunch of face paint really is as I throw this to the round table.
I don't know if Brandon Lee can really be called a star at this point, because this would probably have been his breakout role. Still, this is a great film.
Honestly, The Crow always interested me as a superhero because there are quite a few characters that have been billed as the spirit of vengeance.
I am vengeance. I am the night.
But then go off and fight whoever. This guy, he came back from the dead to get revenge. And that was it. That was all he did. He literally came back to kick some ass and then went back to bed.
That's also implied to be the reason that he stays around after dying, getting shot, and whatnot. His vengeance is literally keeping him alive.
That's how I like my vengeance. Sustaining.
You seriously fucked up?
Honestly, based on the source material, I'm actually kind of glad that the film didn't go as dark as the source material. This film's ending is fairly peaceful and victorious in its tone. Almost uplifting, even. At the end of the comic, he kills a bunch of people, goes to the grave, digs the hole again, shoots himself in the head, and then falls back into his grave.
That sounds boss! I want that ending.
This is still a pretty dark movie. I mean, it's following up Batman, and you can see a bit of that in the tone. But Batman was so dark to the point that it was kind of campy. I mean, the whole city smoking in that movie. Here, it's grungy, but has enough grit to it that the dark elements don't come off as silly.
Honestly, I think it works. I really like the atmosphere they establish in this movie by the cityscape, the character designs, and the really bitching music score.
The score in this film was amazing. The music almost never felt out of place, and the one or two times it did, it was only for like 5 seconds, and we understood why.
I did love how the music was used to establish that emotional connection in the flashbacks between the main guy and his woman. I was like, aw, now I care about both of you, and now I totally want you to murder these fuckers.
I liked some of the flashbacks, but a lot of them felt like they were making the movie drag. I kept thinking, okay, we get it. He had a girlfriend. They were in love. Now they're both dead.
Well, he's dead-ish. He has this bad habit of coming back and murdering people.
He's a magic zombie with his brain and intelligence intact.
Except that most zombies can't will morphine out of people's veins or collect and inflict memories of pain and suffering on other people.
Also, the Crow allows him to see what it sees, which is awesome. Of course, it also reminded me of Beastmaster.
Ow! Those words physically hurt. Don't do that.
Am I the only one who thinks Beastmaster would have been better with more makeup?
Still, it was a cool effect and I really liked it. What I didn't like was how they handled the proverbial deal Brandon Lee has with the Crow. In the film, the Crow gets shot and this does wound it, and somehow that's still enough to take away Brandon Lee's immortality?
To be fair, that crow should have exploded. They shot it with an assault rifle.
Even in the comics, there was a lot of intentional mystery left in terms of what the Crow is, what it can do, and what powers it has. In the comics, it actually talks.
Caw, bitch!
I actually would have liked it if the Crow in the film talked too, because in the comics, the Crow sort of acts like that asshole that keeps beating you over the head with the fact that you're dead and have nothing left in this world. Although I'm ashamed to admit that whenever I heard the Crow talk, I kept flashing back to the racist crows in Dumbo.
Oh my god, we need a black version of the Crow to get his powers from one of them.
It would be like, hey, I'll bring you back from the dead and give you superpowers, but you gotta do something for me. The fuck am I doing this for?
Quick question. Am I the only one who was surprised by how much the Crow managed to rip off the Dark Knight 10 years in advance? I mean, the way he enters a room is exactly like the Joker. The way he disappears causes the exact same reaction as when Batman disappears in The Dark Knight.
He does that a lot.
Also, both movies succeeded in losing one of their major actors before they were released. When you look at the way the Crow points out the guy he wants, and then look at the scene where the Joker points out Gamble, this film is a ripoff!
That actually brings up one of the things I really love about this movie. The Crow puts forth the effort to mind fuck his victims before killing them in brutally creative ways.
Is that gasoline I smell?
No, man. No!
Yeah, and part of what makes that awesome is the sheer level of irony behind these deaths and attacks. Hell, Brandon Lee gets his ring back from the pawn shop owner, and then loads a bunch of rings into a shotgun and shoots into the gas-filled room, causing it to explode. And because the rings bumping into each other while flying at high speeds would cause a spark, it all ends up making sense! And it was awesome!
Well, the gasoline wouldn't explode like that, but I don't care. One more thing before we get to the plot. The best thing about this film is that Brandon Lee completely owned this role. Every scene he was in was excellent. Honestly, without him, this probably wouldn't have been that good. Not bad, but not particularly good either.
It wouldn't have been the same movie without him.
My favorite scene with him was when he confronted the morphine addict. And in this scene, he has this light bulb that he just keeps interacting with. The only thing that could have improved this scene is if he just reached up, bit the light bulb, and ate it. That would have been awesome.
My favorite scene was the one where he just walked into a room filled with armed guys and started murking all of them. The scene is just so basic, but it is so beautiful because it finds this awesome balance between martial arts action, kick-ass gunfighting, and really bitching effects.
The choreography in this movie was amazing. In a lot of action movies, you run into the issue of henchmen just running up and attacking them one at a time. But this was filmed like a real balls-to-the-wall brawl. And it was brilliant.
My favorite scene was T-Bird's murder. He duct tapes the guy inside his car while fucking with him and getting him to remember who he is. Then he sticks an incendiary grenade betwixt his nuts, drops a brick on the accelerator, and pops the car into gear, lighting the whole mess on fire.
I really liked the Crow of Fire that he used as a calling card at the end of that.
His calling card was brilliant! Every time he left a calling card was awesome because A, he's the Crow, and B, you realize what Daredevil was ripping off. But my favorite scene was the one where he tortures the pawn shop guy, and he's like, I'm not gonna kill you.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
Well, let's switch gears. The issue we're going to discuss now is going to cause some controversy because now we're going to talk about the villains. Jimmy liked them, but I personally didn't like any of them except the boss because they were such complete morons. That's why we enjoyed their deaths so much, because they were idiots.
We hated the villains. Light it up, light it up, light it up. Fucking morons! This is what they chant as they are walking down the street in a town that has an event called Burning Night.
Actually, it's called Devil's Night, which is a name given to, I think, the 3 days preceding Halloween, which used to be noted for having heightened arson rates, particularly within Detroit, which is where this film takes place.
I didn't know that.
My favorite villain was T-Bird because he was sort of the brains, and I use that term loosely. Okay, fine. He was the one who actually had a bunch of nerves coalesce into a brain.
I didn't really care much about the villains. I was mostly there for Brandon Lee, but I did kind of like the second in command, Grange. He seemed somewhat interesting.
He's the one I wish was the main villain, because he was like, oh my god, this guy's an idiot. At least my life insurance plan is about to come to fruition. But nope.
Instead, we get Top Dollar.
He was just plain creepy. And a sister fucker.
Sister? She's supposed to be your sister?
My father's daughter. That's right. What's the matter? You don't see the resemblance?
Alright, let's talk about the other major characters, which are the girl and Ernie Hudson.
The Ghostbuster?
Who you gonna call?
He was a special kind of cop.
I thought the police always said freeze.
Well, I am the police. And I say don't move, Snow White. You move, you're dead.
And I say I'm dead.
and I move.
He's not even Commissioner Gordon in this scenario. He just stands there and does nothing.
Question. What was he supposed to do in this scenario? He saw a guy exit a blown-up pawn shop with a shotgun. What would you do?
Strategically piss myself and flee.
There was also the girl who served as an important humanizing force. Our main character grows more and more demonic and sadistic as the film progresses, so her scenes were necessary to keep his humanity intact and make sure he stayed relatable.
Let's be perfectly honest. His entire motivation was, murder these fuckers!
That's actually one of the biggest issues I had with this film. It's basically just a straight-up revenge movie. It would have been easy to incorporate some depth into this film just by bringing up issues like, is he becoming less human? Or, when his soul is brought back to the afterlife, will his actions change his destination? Or, are his actions truly justified? These questions are never even brought up.
Thing is, it may be a straight-up revenge flick, but it is possibly the best revenge flick I've ever seen. True, they don't have him going, am I right in doing this? I'm tired of heroes expounding upon the justice of their actions. This guy goes, you murdered me, and you murdered my girlfriend after you raped her. I'm going to come up with the most twisted and creative ways possible to kill you.
Don't get me wrong, it's still one of the best revenge films, but I would have liked it even more if they had at least touched upon some of these issues, like, would his girlfriend still love him after everything he's done?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. The movie doesn't have a lot of depth, but honestly, its lack of depth kind of gives it a certain charm.
Honestly, if any of the creativity in this movie went into giving the main character depth and discussions of morality, it probably would have taken away from the awesome creativity of the murderous revenge scenes.
I still think its determination not to have any depth kind of drops its value a little in my mind.
Birdy, is it a straightforward revenge story in the comics?
Well, kind of. All of the revenge stuff is still in there, but the overall tone is more existential. Like I said, the absence of the talking crow takes out a lot, because the crow in the comics just keeps chipping away at Eric Draven by making him question his humanity and saying shit like, dude, you're dead. You don't belong here.
So it's sort of like having a passenger in the vehicle going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Except they're heading towards the final destination.
Still, they do have Eric questioning himself in the comics, because compared to the movie, there is a lot of collateral damage that was unnecessary for his revenge.
Going back to something you said, Birdy, about how his need for revenge was what kept him immortal, I thought that was what was happening. In the third act, he kills his last target, and I was like, well, there go your powers. But then he pulls some shit with powers I thought he had lost to take out the last guy. How does that work?
I was like, that was awesome. Where did that come from? Why didn't he use this before to torture these fuckers? That was cool, and I was willing to accept it.
There really isn't that much I don't like about this film. The only big thing I don't like is the villains. They were all brain dead, ineffectual, or one note. The things I did like include the sets, the action scenes and set pieces, the acting, the characters, and the really bitching musical score. The musical score set the mood for this movie, and Brandon Lee sold the story and the main character. The film does have some problems. Like you guys said, it's not that deep, and it relies more on thrilling theatrical violence and effects than cerebral storytelling. This is also the only time I've ever thought, you know what this movie needs? A racist, trash-talking crow. Beyond that, everything else about this movie is so entertaining that I have to give it a high abduct a friend. 8 out of 10.
Oh my god, I love this movie! Honestly, The Crow has just catapulted into my top 5 favorite superhero movies lists. To be honest, I at least enjoyed everything about this movie. I didn't like the villains, but I at least enjoyed them. They were stupid. Honestly, the 4 main villains that we get to know the best don't have enough synapses between them to get a spark to fire. Any cop that hears them say, light it up, on a night known for arson is going to watch them like a hawk.
You're harping.
Yes, I'm harping! That's what the wrap-up is for! But the rest of the side characters were actually one of the strongest aspects of this movie. The Crow is amazing, but his backup singers were what made him more than a psychopath with a love for face paint. His love for the little girl convinces him to save her mother and fix her life. And the cop? I love that he was played by a Ghostbuster, since he's stuck as an intermediary between law enforcement and the Crow. I love this movie. Harem Brigade, 9 out of 10.
I like this movie, I'm not gonna lie. In a movie that is this fairly shallow, you still feel a very strong emotional response. The flashbacks do an excellent job of helping you identify with the dead guy, which is necessary so that he isn't just evil. The music was beautiful in how it was used to establish the atmosphere, set up tone in the scenes, and establish emotional connections between the characters. Alright, enough of that artsy crap. The murders were so fun, each of them was a beauty of literary irony, as well as pure, detailed, gory fun. You're like, yay, me happy with murder. It make me feel good.
You seriously fucked up?
The Crow is so creative with murder that he's like the Van Gogh of homicide. The dialogue was shallow and didn't make any sense, but the dialogue in the scenes where the Crow was torturing and murdering people? Beautiful. The casting was great. Yes, the villains were stupid, but they still acted out their scenes well. Not only is the Crow awesome, but the Crow. The actual big black bird crow that was flying around was awesome. When it got kidnapped by that creepy Asian lady and it bit her eye out and tasted her sweet eye juices, that was great. I was like, ha ha hee hee ho ho.
You seriously fucked up?
Yes, this movie has its flaws, but I don't care. Let people enjoy this awesome movie. I give it an 8 out of 10. That's an Abductor Friend.
I enjoyed this film. Again, the lack of depth doesn't harm this film, it just keeps it from being a true masterpiece. It's a great film that I can recommend showing to any friends you have. It's probably great for parties. It does have this strange, almost depressing tone given the fact that Brandon Lee actually died during the making of this film. But it's still just a great film and a great performance by Brandon Lee. And I wish we could have seen more of him. I really can't say with any certainty where they had to use a stunt double instead of Brandon Lee. I would assume it's on the free-running scenes, but I really can't tell beyond that. I thought the supporting cast was fine. They did their job, but they were overshadowed by Brandon Lee. But given the history of this film, I am perfectly fine with that. He should get as much spotlight as he can. What's more, the soundtrack was excellent. If there's one thing that can cure the depressing tone of this movie, apparently it's The Cure. Ultimately, this is one of my favorite superhero movies. Probably not in the top 5, but this is an Abductor Friend for me.
Well, with 3 Abductor Friend ratings and 1 Harem Brigade, the MediaWhorz consensus is Abductor Friend. Well, considering how badass the Crow is, there is only one villain he can fight. Scarecrow. See you next time.
Beastmaster.
Oh!